Y'all ready for me?
Yes.
All right, some energy, I like that. Hey, so imagine this for a second. Imagine that you believe that within you there's an imminent threat right now. That within the lining of your arteries right now, there's this thick, waxy, uncontrollable substance that just keeps getting deposited within your artery walls. Imagine that there's a belief system that you have that your blood pressure just continues to tick up, tick up, tick up, tick up, tick up, and there's really nothing you can do about it. Imagine that you believe that the lining of your artery continues to thin out and narrow out so much that not only raises your blood pressure, but is literally just a ticking time bomb ready to burst. Imagine that being your belief system about the heart. And how many of you know that's the current belief system that we have in America about cardiovascular disease? Amen? Okay, so what you're going to learn tonight is going to completely debunk everything you've known and been taught about the cardiovascular system. And by the time you leave tonight, you're going to have a whole different perspective on not only cardiovascular health, but cholesterol, why plaquing builds up in the first place, the way blood actually flows through your body, how the heart isn't just a pump that's a mechanistic pump, but you're going to leave here with a level of respect and a level of, I would say, a level of healthy understanding of what it really means to have not only a healthy heart, but a healthy body. So for those of you I haven't had a chance to meet yet, I'm Dr. Nick Wilson, I'm the owner of Max Living Indy. We've got Dr. Phil Harris, he's our naturopathic physician. We're going to go through in the next 90 minutes information that maybe this is the first time you've heard this information before, and if it is the first time you've heard this information, it will be counter to what you've been taught in the past. And if this is your first experience with Max Living, welcome. It might feel like I'm feeding you with a fire hose tonight. How many of you, this is like your first experience with Max Living, like ever? Raise your hand if this is like you're a guest here tonight. This is your first. Yeah, hey, all right. There's a handful. Give them a hand. Yes. Yeah. So we'll give you the opportunity to plug into the culture, plug into Max Living, come into the office, get analyzed, get checked. For those of you who have maybe heard this a handful of times, how many of you know you don't hear one thing once and remember it fully? Yes? Right? So what you're going to leave here tonight, don't write down everything we say. Listen for the few little nuggets that you're going to leave here and take action on. Because how many of you know that information doesn't move the needle, information doesn't change lives? You've got to do what with it? You've got to take action. So everyone say, take action. Take action. So there's going to be actionable steps that you leave here with tonight to be healthy, stay healthy, really for the rest of your life. Sound good? All right. So I want to tell you that across the nation, we call this Max Living Nation. This is a map. There are doctors all over the country, all over North America, including Canada, that are having a workshop or about to have a cardiovascular workshop. And the whole idea of Max Living is to transform lives, but teach you how to take ownership over your health, responsibility over your health, understand what true health really means. Because how many of you know right now in today's world, we need a new level of responsibility for our health? How many of you know it's not somebody else's job to take care of your health? Yes? It's not someone else's job to make you safe. Yes? It's not someone else's job to make sure that you have the right environment to not only heal, but to thrive and be well. Yes? And so the whole idea of Max Living is to empower you to live your best life. And so our purpose is to be the standard, but also help people to become the standard in their household and in their family. When you become the standard bearer, your family starts to look up to you and look to you as a resource in health. And how many of you know we need that now more than ever? Yes? We need that right now more than ever. In this world of COVID, it's highlighted what are the threats, what are the real problems, because if nothing else, 2020 taught us that fear, anxiety, and depression actually play a physiological role, not just a psychological role in one's life. Can you guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
Fear, anxiety, depression actually play a huge role, not only in overall health, but also in your heart. So I've seen more patients this year than I've ever seen have issues with heart attacks, high blood pressure, pacemakers, a condition called Takotsubo syndrome. How many of you know that condition, Takotsubo syndrome? You heard that on my video. Okay, all right.
Is that from the 70s?
Takotsubo syndrome. So it's actually, it looks like a heart attack. It's not a heart attack. All the symptoms of a heart attack, but actually is coming from our psychological impact, so anxiety, fear, stress. And so just taking a step back and realize really the imminent threat that we really need to consider and talk about is not just the one that is either plaguing or not plaguing the world right now. Right now, how many of you know that more people die of cardiovascular disease than anything else? I want to be clear, than anything else. Second is cancer. So when you consider what's actually killing more people, it's not an acute illness or acute virus right now more than anything else. We have what's killed more people than anything in history, and it's cardiovascular disease, and it's a chronic behavior or chronic lifestyle induced many times issue, and what you're going to learn today is how to prevent that. And if you have had issues, you have had problems, you have had, let's say, high blood pressure, you have had, you're on a medication or on a cholesterol medication. How many of you know somebody that is on a cholesterol-lowering medication, either you, yourself, or someone you know or love? Raise your hand, right? Keep your hand raised for a second. How many of you know somebody who's on a high blood pressure pill? Raise your hand if you know somebody on a high blood pressure pill. How many of you know someone who died of heart disease? Raise your hand. So look around. This affects all of us, yes? Mm-hmm. And so understanding right now who actually suffers from COVID, who's actually at the highest risk of COVID. Do you know that those who actually died of COVID, the CDC did a study, and they found that those who died of COVID on average had 2.9 comorbidities. 2.9 comorbidities. So what were they? They were things like heart disease. They're things like obesity. They're things like pulmonary problems or COPD. And so those people were already very sick to begin with. And so if we don't want to be a statistic, then we have to live obviously very different. So the challenge is to kind of look at things optimistically right now. Anybody else struggle with kind of looking through a rose-colored glasses right now that the future is bright? The reason why the future is bright is a couple of fold. One is that you have everything within you to be healthy. The body is self-healing, self-regulating. That there's a regenerative potential within the body that is always moving in the right direction, that's always trying to heal, that's always trying to recover. We put our body into some level of assault, but the body responds, and it responds very, very positively. Innate intelligence is just within us, that our body's running and governing and responding on a second-to-second basis. And one of the principles that you'll see, it's principle number 25 in chiropractic, but these are not chiropractic principles, these are universal laws, but it says the character of innate forces, the forces of innate intelligence never injure or destroy the structures in which they work. Why is this fundamental to our understanding of heart health? Is because when we start talking about cholesterol, that turns that up on its head. Because listen to what I said, the forces of innate intelligence never injure or destroy the structures in which they work. And you have to come to grips at some point and really meet this in the face. Do you really believe a 5-year-old has within them a genetically programmed ticking time bomb that is going to injure the tissues in which it exists? Because if you don't believe that, then at what age is it then appropriate to believe that that person has something that is within them that is making this deadly substance that it will eventually kill them without a pharmaceutical product? Do you see this? And so at some point, philosophically, you say, well, can we get to nutrition? Philosophically, we've got to come to grip with this at some point because we're only one adverse event away or crisis situation away from making a very terrible decision that sometimes is irreversible. Mm-hmm. And so coming to grips with this and understanding this, and I'm going to give you a couple different examples as we go throughout, but when we talk about nutrition, how important nutrition is, how important exercising is, and minimizing toxins because there are many things that are cardiotoxic, and we talk about the importance of the spine and nervous system, we can't jump over how important our mental health is, our mindset, a growth mindset, our belief in ourselves, and understanding of philosophy, because that is at the heart of everything we believe. At the heart of everything that we believe is that the body is brilliant, the body is intelligent, that the body is always working towards doing the right thing, and we need to honor the body, respect the body. And that's a very different philosophical approach than what you see in modern medicine. So tonight we're going to talk about 4 things. We're going to talk about healing the heart. Starts with identifying the cause or cause is. Remove the interference or interference is. Move strategically, not not just walking, but move strategically. Balancing the nervous system. So these are the 4 principles of healing the heart. So if you're writing something down, this is what's going to follow. The outline of tonight will follow those 4 things, which is, I'll go back, identifying the causes, remove the interference, move strategically, and balancing the nervous system. So everything we talk about tonight will fall into those specific categories. So identifying the cause or causes of heart disease. And to do that, we have to look at cholesterol and identify what is actually cholesterol. Because you'll hear that there's HDL and LDL, there is bad cholesterol, and there is what? Good cholesterol. You've been lied to. Everyone say, you've been lied to.
You've been lied to.
There's no such thing as bad cholesterol or good cholesterol. There's always necessary cholesterol.
That's correct.
There's only necessary cholesterol. There are little molecules, not to get sciencey here, there are little molecules that take cholesterol from the liver to the site of injury, and there are molecules that take it back. Those are necessary molecules. Those lipoproteins, or those carriers of lipoproteins, those are both necessary molecules. In fact, without either one of those, you and I would not be living. So understanding that these are necessary, but why do they then call them bad and or good cholesterol? It's because when you look into an artery wall and you see a thick, waxy substance, and you go in there and you say, let's put this under a microscope. Wow, that's cholesterol. And so if you are just looking at it from a microscopic view lens without looking at the body holistically, you'll say, well, that waxy substance was deposited there as a negative or bad thing, and thus we should then trick the liver into not producing this level of cholesterol. That is a very microscopic view without asking why. Why did cholesterol get deposited there in the first place? How many of you know that cholesterol is developed and made in response to inflammation? Inflammation is at the heart of the reason why cholesterol exists. One of my mentors, he diagnosed with a condition that was causing his cholesterol to raise. But his cholesterol was not raising because of this weird genetic condition. He had an inflammatory condition that was happening, and his cholesterol got up into like the 4 and 500s. 4 and 500s. Now, if you were to then go into the emergency medical center of any kind, and they would test you and they'd find 4 to 500 levels, you're not probably coming out of there until they can artificially lower that down. If they would have lowered that down, he would have been stuck with his autoimmune inflammatory condition for the rest of his life. Now, hear me when I say this. If they would have artificially lowered that, healing would not have happened.
Right.
So that was in response to an inflammatory condition, but it was a necessary condition that caused it to begin with.
Right.
And so we can't look at health from a microscopic lens without looking at the whole picture or asking what's actually causing this. Why is this actually here in the first place? So cholesterol is not good or bad. It's what? Necessary. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you've heard that that cholesterol causes heart disease. It's really the oxidation of cholesterol that causes heart disease, that'll cause heart attacks leading to stroke and or atherosclerosis. So it's the oxidation. Again, this is the part you've been lied to. You've been told it's all cholesterol, it's the oxidation. We'll talk about why it oxidizes. The truth is that more people actually have heart attacks with normal cholesterol than elevated cholesterol. Hear me when I say that. More people have heart attacks with normal cholesterol than elevated cholesterol. This will be interactive. Why do you think that is?
Because they're on statins.
They're on statins. That's exactly right. More people take statins now more than ever. It's one of the most popular drugs to be on is a statin medication. And what is one of the side effects of statin medications? Who knows? Yeah, erectile dysfunction is one of them. Yep. And oh, by the way, what do you think the number 2 selling drug is for? Viagra is right.
There you
so
go.
they sell the problem and the solution. Sounds like what we're dealing with COVID. Interesting.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then you have what else? You have memory issues, Alzheimer's, right? You have neurodegenerative conditions. Why would that be a side effect of a statin-lowering medication? Because why? When you lower cholesterol, the production of cholesterol, where do you lower it from? Globally. What is your brain made up of? Fat, cholesterol.
Yep.
So just consider what we're actually doing, and is that actually the cause? Is it that your liver is doing a bad thing? Is it your liver that's just gone awry? Is it a genetic?
No.
Is it a genetic problem that all of a sudden your liver is now cycling, that now you have to interrupt that in forever? Because how many of you know once you're on it, how long are you going to take it? The rest of your life. They don't tell you this when they put you on it. That's the plan.
Absolutely.
Truth is, there's a higher death rate with low cholesterol than high cholesterol. That's the truth. So, Dr. Phil, do you want to go through this study? I think this is good, especially for those with science brain. I think this is going to be good to just kind of see it instead of just trusting us.
Well, the importance of HDL and LDL, every cell in our body actually needs and produces its own cholesterol. It's needed to protect the cell membranes and most concentrated in the brain. Actually, neither of these are bad. We've already alluded to this. Both are protein molecules that carry cholesterol through the body. LDL is called bad cholesterol because it takes cholesterol from the liver and deposits it throughout the body and the tissues. HDL take it from the tissues back to the liver. Both are essential substances, though, and we can't live without them. They're essential substances. If you drop LDL, now listen close to this, if we drop LDL low enough, you are going to have brain problems. And here's the other thing, we need LDL to fight infections.
Yeah.
We need LDL to fight infections, so if it drops low enough, we're going to have more problems with infections. And so we have to realize that cholesterol is not the enemy. What is the enemy? What is the enemy? Inflammation.
Right.
That's the enemy. So what we want to do is attack inflammation and not the cholesterol. But there's not as much money to be made in doing that, because if we attack inflammation, we basically attack every source of every disease that's in our body. Would you agree?
Yeah, and so it comes down to this condition called, the real condition here that will cause inflammation is metabolic inflexibility. Metabolic inflexibility. You might say, well, what in the world is that? In essence, it's your body's inability to adapt. Your body's inability to adapt. Why would your body have an inability to adapt? Well, when we are chronically poisoning ourselves, how many of you know we don't adapt very well? When we're constantly causing inflammation from the foods that we're eating, we're not going to adapt appropriately. Our blood vessels don't expand and retract the way that they're supposed to when it's an environment of chronic stress.
Yep.
So when we have the blood vessels, our cardiovascular system that's constantly being onslaughted by not only not moving the way that we should, but also not eating the way that we should, and also feeding ourselves with things that are extremely toxic, exposing ourselves to even things like, I don't know, gene therapies that we're currently doing right now. And you consider that our body can only take so much until it retreats. We can only abuse the body so long until eventually it no longer becomes flexible. And so our artery walls are not going to expand and retract the way that they should when we constantly give it this onslaught or this environment that's not actually conducive to health. So at the heart of inflammation, I want everyone to say sugar.
Absolutely.
Just cut to the chase. It's sugar. So sugar is a huge problem when it comes to inflammation, and our body responds to it by increasing inflammation. So sugar flames the fire, and you say, well, I don't eat sugar. Well, okay, let's peel that back. There are things that are not just directly sugar, but then turn to sugar. So how many of you know bread turns to sugar? Bread, grains of all kind, by the way, rice. You know, we're talking about things that turn to sugar, and if you look at what turns to sugar, you say, well, I don't eat any of those things, Doc. Well, do you drink it? Because how many of you know that in your Starbucks Frappuccino, there's that's more than a 2 liter of Pepsi, right?
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
So it's not always what we're eating, it's what we're putting into our body, though, and it flames the fan of inflammation.
Yes.
And so not only is it what we're eating, but we're also feeding inflammation by the drugs we're taking. And again, we come back to, okay, well then I've abused my body for decades, Doc. So I think I should probably be on the drug. This is a common thing that I hear from patients. So I've abused my body for so long, it's probably to a point of no return. You say matter has limitations, so are statins the answer? Well, that's a personal decision that you have to make. And I don't say that's a decision that you make between you and your doctor. That's a decision that you personally have to choose to make. you have to then look at the other side of the statin medications, which we've already described, but we also have to choose what route am I going to be on.
Yeah.
Because once you start, a lot of times it's a pathway to never stop. And so the understanding of that, like which path do you want to be on? A lot of times at our workshops and our seminars, I'll describe the matrix, the red pill or the blue pill. How many of you seen the Matrix? All right, so it's like Morpheus is standing there, red pill and blue pill. Neo's in front of him. He's like, Neo, which one are you going to choose? You know, with this blue pill, your eyes are going to be opened. You're going to see things differently from here moving forward. Red pill, you can go back to being a sheep and have your eyes closed and just, you'll be a part of the Matrix, but you won't know about the Matrix. But easier life over here, but it's a life of suffering. You won't know it.
Right.
And it's like, which one do you choose? And I think that's the point of decision. And no one can tell you, me, a doctor, or anyone else in your family, if that's the answer. It's really a personal decision. But you do have to know the risks, the benefits, and alternatives. And guess what? You're never told any of those three things when you're put on a life-altering, brain-altering, forever medication that will affect your physiology and your brain health. And I would say your number one asset. You're not told the risks, benefits, or alternatives. It's more of a coercion conversation in my experience. Maybe yours has been different.
Right.
So there are cholesterol-supporting nutrients and some things that you can do nutritionally that can really help you. How many of you are interested in knowing cholesterol-supporting nutrients that you can consume? Mm-hmm. So there are also some things that you can do naturally that can support natural, healthy, good cholesterol. Do you want to talk about curcumin?
Sure.
Yeah, I think
sure.
that'd be good.
Yeah. So curcumin is a long time used herb. This is probably one of the most broadly used. It's extremely anti-inflammatory in the body. It helps the brain, which again is connected to the heart. You can look this up at pubmed.gov and actually see all the studies done on this, so you don't have to take our word for it. Pubmed.gov, look it up and see it. This is capable of basically putting the fire out in almost every part of your body if you take a good quality curcumin. Now, again, I want to say good quality, and it's an honor to be with the Max Living team because we work really hard to keep our supplements at good quality. So buy the ones that you know are good because there's a lot of cheap ones out there that aren't going to work the same. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
CoQ10 is another one. When you take a statin medication as an example, CoQ10 is one of the inhibiting factors and one of the cofactors that gets depleted when you take a statin medication. So what most people don't know is that there's pathways in the body, and when we do testing, this is one of the metabolic testing that we do, you can see CoQ10 being depleted with a lot of people. CoQ10 is a cofactor for muscle tension. It's a cofactor for brain health, for memory. Yep. When you're deficient in CoQ10, you not only can have muscle tightness, muscle weakness, but also memory problems. And for a lot of people, CoQ10 is one of those cofactors or coenzymes that are either non-existent or they're depleted because of statin-lowering medications. Mm-hmm. Now, medical doctors picked up on this, and they will recommend sometimes you get on a CoQ10 supplement. Now, they say that in passing, but it's actually one of the things that could save your life if you have taken a statin-lowering medication at any point in your life. So CoQ10 is one of the nutrients that is regenerative to the heart, but also it's going to help recover from statin abuse.
Yes.
Another one is red yeast rice. How many of you have heard of red yeast rice? I think a lot of people know about red yeast rice. That actually helps with blood vessel viscosity. It helps open the lumen of the blood vessels. It helps to not break up the substances, but they become less hard and thick. And so that's been used for centuries for blood vessel health and circulation. Yes. And so those are just some of the nutrients that are very beneficial. We don't want to skip over plant sterols, and that's not just from eating plants or eating greens. Plant sterols, the molecule within plants, and you see this is why vegetarians and vegans, not that we're promoting vegetarian or vegan diet exclusively, but they tend to have really good blood vessel health. It's because they've loaded up on life-giving food, and specifically the plant sterols within the plant property. That's one of the major benefiting factors that allow you to have good blood vessel health that can expand and retract naturally without any problems there. And so those are just some of the things that is cholesterol supporting. And so recovering from statin medication, we have a bundle that Max Living put together. Recovering from statin medication, Curcumin C3, plant sterols, and red yeast rice with the CoQ10. It has all 4 of those properties that we just talked about. You have somebody start doing this who struggles with cholesterol problems, their cholesterol is not only going to start going down, but you've seen people who actually recover from plaquing of the arteries. I have patients who've gone from 90% plaquing of the arteries and have done a version of this, and it starts to reduce over time. It's because it allows it to expand the way that it's supposed to. Remember, this whole idea of plaquing of the arteries, the way that we have understood it in the past, is actually wrong, just so we're very clear about this. It's not that the body is sending this thick, waxy substance called cholesterol into the artery wall. What's actually happening, it's an immunoinflammatory response that creates fatty streaks within the artery wall.
That's correct.
That's what actually is happening. And cytokines are at the heart of what's actually happening. And you can look this up. You can look this up on PubMed, get on GreenMed Info, look at the research. So what you have to really target, if you're targeting something, is the cytokine reaction and the immunoinflammatory response that's occurring there. That's why people get such good response when you start actually targeting what's at the heart of the inflammatory response.
Yep.
And that might sound like scientific, whatever genre or jargon, but when you actually know what you're doing and know the mechanism of injury when it comes to cholesterol and when it comes to atherosclerosis, that's how you get better responses. And that's how you don't live in fear over that thing that's going to eventually occlude your arteries and kill you. Is that straightforward enough?
That's straightforward enough,
Okay.
Absolutely.
So we understand that the old way of understanding plaquing of the arteries is not true, but you've been told that fat is the problem. And we've termed fat is the scapegoat. Because fat is not your enemy, fat is not our enemy. Fat is actually necessary. And Dr. Phil, you had a conversation recently about fat. You can take this, but I'll just go ahead.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want you to know that it's absolutely true that fat is not the enemy, but it's the type of fat. But I want you to remember this statement here. Let me see if Udo Erasmus, first of all. Yeah. Udo Erasmus, he's probably the authority in the world on good fats and bad fats. But fat that is fried or heated is going to stick to the artery walls. No matter if it is a good fat to begin with, it's going to change. Okay? So if you fry oil, you fry health. Say that with me. Fry oil, fry health. Say it again. Fry oil, fry health. That's the biggest thing I want you to know about oils. And here's why I say that. I don't want to be over simplistic, but many times the things that are killing us are quite simple. We go out, I had somebody ask me today, is sunflower oil okay? Is sesame seed oil okay? Well, it might be, they're not as good as avocado oil and coconut oil for us, but once you heat these oils for any length of time, they're going to stick to the artery walls. And what do we usually do? We go buy a really good oil and then we start heating it. That's probably the most destructive thing we've ever done in our country is start heating oils. What did we used to do years and years and years and years ago? How did we cook? We boiled. It was with water. In fact, I'm going to tell you right now, if you want to put oil on vegetables, the best way to do is steam those vegetables or boil them and then add the oil afterwards without heating the oil. Yeah. That's the best way to handle that. But if I had to tell anybody with my 35 years in doing this, what you fry oils, fry health. I'm telling you that is the main problem we have with oils.
Yep. So there's good fats and bad fats, right? So the bad fats are those that you might assume are bad fats. Margarine, I can't believe it's not butter. That's because it's not. It's not. It's been said it's one molecule away from plastic. So if you put, I've shown pictures of this in the past. How many of you have seen the pictures I've shown that put butter, margarine in the woods and you see the ants? Anybody ever seen my ant picture that I post? All right, so you put margarine and butter out in like the woods, and the ants, they'll go to one of them. Which one do you think they go to? The real butter, and they actually drown in the margarine on the way to the butter. There's only a few ants that get trapped in the margarine. So the bad fats are not the real fats in general. So the bad fats are not the real fats. So these are the corn oils. How many of you know it's very difficult, if you take a stalk of corn, it's very difficult to get oil out of that thing. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's been subsidized though. So because it's been subsidized and it's very cheap because of subsidization, then you can get a lot out of nothing if you have enough mass, enough volume. And so hydrogenated oils, partially hydrogenated oils, you'll see these on packaged foods, you'll see these on crackers, you'll see these on chips. If you see those hydrogenated oils, then you want to avoid those. But most of the things that you'll find these in are packaged foods. So if you're seeing it in packaged foods, and we shouldn't be eating a lot of packaged foods, then what does it tell you is that if they're using those types of oils, it should probably just be avoided altogether. If you see a brand that is using bad fats, you take note of that brand and you don't go back, right? So you have to have some level of brand allegiance, but as soon as they violate that brand allegiance to you and they maybe cut corners or they put something in your food that is toxic or poisonous, cut ties, move on, and it might be just a little bit more expensive to buy the one with, let's say, avocado oil or olive oil. You know, as Dr. Phil said, that extra virgin olive oil is a good oil until you heat it up. Put it on the stove and it starts to, steam a little bit. That smoke. Just dump it out, start over, because you just turned a really good, healthy fat into a bad fat.
Yep.
Coconut oil is not that way. Coconut oil is actually a medium chain fatty acid. It's actually a good healthy fat. Within the last 2 years, the American Heart Association vilified coconut oil. They came after it, and guess what? All the research they were using was inaccurate. It was not true, and when they came back, they found out that there was some low level of corruption that had happened there, and what they were doing is they were actually trying to attack coconut oil so that you would then go to things like vegetable oils, or let's say Canadian low acid stands for canola oil, right? How many of you grew up in the era where canola oil was considered good, right?
Yep.
So it stands for Canadian low acid, and so it's made from a rapeseed plant, rapeseed, but then it's chemically modified in a plant. How many of you know they couldn't market rapeseed very well for obvious reasons, so they changed the name, and that's a whole chemistry process that happens there. It's not a real oil. It's not a real oil, so it's not going to have the fat content, and so, it's marketed as low fat, hardly any fat, and that's why it's being sold, because of the low fat or no fat content. But just because something is low fat or no fat does not make it healthy. Do you guys get that?
Yeah, because we had low fat donuts. You remember those?
That was good. That was good. Good leeway. All right, so we got to pick this up. We got to remove the interferences. So what does removing the interference means? Well, there's an interference to our regenerative potential of our body, specifically the heart. The heart has regenerative potential within it. That's the amazing thing about the heart, is that it can heal. There's several organ systems within our body that has a high regenerative capacity or capability. You probably know about the liver. Now it's known that the brain has regenerative potential. That's really good news for anyone who believes they have memory problems or is cognitively declining, or you're having brain fog. The good news is that our heart is the same way, is that it has regenerative potential within it given the right circumstances.
Yes, it does. And remember what I said before, the body prioritizes things. How many of you have heard me teach on the gout? You've heard me talk about the gout in one of our sessions. Have you heard about that?
The gout.
Okay, so the gout. Everybody's got their gout. Okay, so what did I teach you about that? Is that is a uric acid problem, but for some reason this uric acid ends up in the big toe or an ankle. And what is making the decision? The body is making the decision to push that all the way as far from the heart is because the uric acid is toxic to the heart. So your body is working very diligently to try to regenerate this all the time. We have to do a lot of things wrong to get the heart to go south. Now, if you're born with some kind of a genetic problem that needs help and surgery, we're not against any of that. We're just telling you that most of the heart problems that are killing people are not from that. They're from our lifestyle. That's what's tearing everything down. And how many of you have ever heard of heart cancer? Okay, why do you suppose that is? With cancer as the second biggest killer, it's because the body is so smart it knows not to allow toxin to go there. So it puts it in other places that are the least needed for life. I'm telling you, that's how it works. Now, there are some rare cases, but that's because the body's so confused by heavy metal poisonings and things that go into the body, pesticides, that it can't carry out the innate intelligence properly anymore. That's why we do what we do with the cleansing and the regeneration that we do, so that the body can get back talking to itself, because your body is never going to be wrong about its own wellness as long as we don't stand in its way. Yes?
That's
Absolutely.
right. So there's just some concepts with nutrition that is really important. If we're going to give the body the right environment, to make it very simple, there's a couple just principles to live by. And these are just universal laws, universal principles like we talked about earlier. There's food by God and there's food by man. Okay, because we talk about, what to eat. There's so much confusion when we meet with patients and sit down and talk with them. Like, doc, what do I eat? I don't know what to eat. I don't know what to pick out. I don't know how to make my breakfast.
Yep.
There's food by God and there's food by man. Let's make it very simple. Food by man is food by manufacturing. It's food by a chemical processing plant. It's genetically modified many times. It's ridden with pesticides and herbicides and things that really never were meant to be consumed by us. They're not here from the earth. They're not here that's been here for maybe thousands of years or however many years that you believe we've been around. It's food that has recently, with industrialization, been introduced to our bodies. That is food by man, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Food by God is opposite of that. This is the food that has been around for centuries. It's food that's from the earth. It's food that's meant for us. It's food that is grazing out there. It's not just plants, but it's food that is out there that is really either you believe it's designed or not designed for us to eat, or we have been consuming over centuries. So to really understand this, and make it simple, we have to understand that if we're eating sugar and eating things that are inflammatory to our body, then we can kind of negate some of these raw materials that we talk about. Because we talk about nitric oxide being so important, but I don't want you to miss the bigger picture. We're going to talk about nitric oxide and how beneficial it is to your artery wall, and why I believe that most people are either deficient in nitric oxide and should be on something that's going to boost their nitric oxide levels, especially if you have a history of heart problems. But don't miss the fact that if you're putting food by man into your body still, that you're going to miss the bigger picture and still have problems when it comes to your heart.
That's right. Let me add one thing, because he made an excellent point there. If you're supplementing and you're not eating food by God, it's like turning your thermostat up and keeping your windows open.
Good analogy.
That's exactly what it's like. And how many of you know that's expensive? Okay?
That's good. You want to go into nitric oxide there too?
Yes, I will.
Reverend?
Yeah. Nitric oxide. So this is known as the miracle molecule. The miracle molecule. From the president of the American Heart Association, the discovery of nitric oxide and its function is one of the most important in the history of cardiovascular medicine. In addition, in 1998, 3 scientists received the Nobel Prize in Medicine for their discoveries related to the astonishing benefits of nitric oxide. Note, we must support nitric oxide because studies show by age 30, our bodies begin to lose specific elements that help the body make this amazing gas. Now, this is a gas. Now, I know some of you have husbands here who make gas, but not this kind, right? So we can't supplement nitric oxide. The body has to make it, but we can supplement things that help the body make this very important gas. One being L-arginine. And by the age of 50, almost all of us are in great need of support of this to help the body make this amazing gas called nitric oxide. So we all need help to support this. And again, Max Living has come out with a wonderful product to help this happen, along with your carrot, apple, beet, celery juice that many of you drink that I have told you to do. It's supporting your nitric oxide. And I'm just going to tell you, the blood pressure follows. It's going to start. I've had people whose blood pressure have dropped 15 points in 3 weeks by adding these elements.
So where do you get nitric oxide? He alluded to it. Beets is a big one. Pomegranate is another one. Garlic is another one. So adding these into daily living. I had somebody tell me that he was like in his 20s, and he said, I don't think I've ever eaten a beet before.
Well,
there are people, I meet with patients a lot that, just some of these things like garlic just is not a part of their normal routine. So the girls are passing out strips to test nitric oxide levels. So you can actually lick the strip, and then and you can, within just a matter of minutes, it's going to start changing colors. So they're passing it out for you. So is this a perfect test? Of course not. But you'd be surprised how many people, just with this little test alone, that person who said, I've never even eaten a beet before, his didn't change colors when he did this test.
That's right. And it should be a kind of a dark burgundy color if you're good on nitric oxide. Most people, it's a very faint pink. Yeah. So you put the raised edge in your mouth and kind of move it around the saliva for about 10 seconds and then take it out. And about 15 seconds later, it's going to change color. If it gets redder, you're better. Redder is better. And light color means not so good.
Yeah, it really should be about that color right there on the, you see that? That's what it should get to. So they're passing it out. You'll see it. The nitric oxide is so important. But when it comes to supplementation, as Dr. Phil said, it's called supplemental for a reason. It's supplemental to not only good diet, it's just good habits, right? It's supplemental to good habits. It's nutritional insurance. So you only supplement for that which you can't get from food. I used to have the belief that you should get all of your nutrients from food, and you can get all of your nutrients from food. That's before I knew how depleted our soil was.
Yeah.
Our soil is extremely depleted. Right now, they've said it takes 3 apples. It takes the equivalent of 33 apples to equal what it was 3 apples just 30 years ago, is the saying.
Yep.
And so our soil is depleted. How many of you know a regenerative farmer or know about regenerative farming? Anybody heard that term before? Okay, so when you understand regenerative farming and understand our current agricultural situation where we're not using regenerative farming practices to regenerate the land, to remineralize the land, you'll find out very, very quickly that our food is not containing what it once did. There's a documentary out that I highly recommend called Kiss the Ground. How many of you have seen Kiss the Ground already? No one? Are you kidding me? No one's seen Kiss the Ground. All right, homework.
Yeah.
Go watch Kiss the Ground.
Yep.
We need to learn about regenerative farming. And so if we really wanted to save the planet, if you will, regenerative farming is at its core. So again, supplements are for supplemental, they're nutritional insurance. And so you don't treat high blood pressure, you don't treat high cholesterol, you don't treat atherosclerosis with supplements. This is not how you treat it. You treat it by the way you live, and that as a byproduct, your atherosclerosis or your blood pressure, it starts to regulate itself on its own because we have this inborn intelligence within us that is constantly working towards health and balance and homeostasis. Give curcumin to a dead person and see what happens.
Yep.
Right? There's a life inside of you that makes this all work. So to be very clear, none of this works unless you have life inside of you. Understanding the mechanisms of injury, such as blood pressure, is important. And so blood pressure, it's called the silent what? Silent killer, because why? Why is it called that? You don't feel it, right? Just like cancer. How do you feel as you're developing high blood pressure? How do you feel as you're developing cancer? You don't feel these types of things, and they call it silent because again, it's a little bit of a scare tactic because it can kill you out of nowhere is what they say. If you're in tune with your body, you know when your blood pressure is elevated, just so you know. If you're in tune with your body, you know when there's something that's not right. The healthier you get, the more adverse response you have to poisoning.
Yeah.
The healthier you get, the more of an adverse response you have to poisoning. Gluten, as an example. How many of you know that you're gluten sensitive? Raise your hand if you know that you're gluten sensitive. Okay, all of us, that's a gift by the way, but all of us, we should know, are gluten sensitive. We just don't always have the symptoms of gluten sensitivity. It's a gift to know you're sensitive. It's a gift when your body reacts to a certain level of poisoning. So if your throat closes up when you eat gluten, as an example, praise God, that is amazing because now your body is telling you and you're aware of what's going on.
Yep.
The healthier you get more in tune. So blood pressure, understanding blood pressure and what it really is, and also understanding what it's not. If a bear walks into those double doors right there, a bear just comes barreling in here, how many of you know your blood pressure is going to go up?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you were to run straight into my office and I got my blood pressure cuff out and I started pumping it up after you have run from a bear, how many of you know your blood pressure will be elevated? Your blood pressure will also look like it's hypertensive. And if I were to only base that decision based off of that individual appointment, that individual time, guess what you might be put on, not in my office, but what you'd be put on is a blood pressure lowering medication. How many of you heard of white coat syndrome? It's not fake, that is real. There are people that just by walking into any medical office will have a certain level of low-level anxiety and their blood pressure will raise. How many people do you think get put on a blood pressure pill accidentally or because of a situation like that?
It happens.
It's not just blood pressure. Blood pressure, that's again a microscopic view of a dynamic process that happens. So it's not just white coat syndrome, it's not just anxiety. There are certain people who have elevated blood pressure, but what you've been told about 120/80 being what's normal, that might not be normal for you. What we're now understanding, if you look at the research, is not blood pressure as much as it is pulse pressure. Pulse pressure is the difference between the numbers. Pulse pressure, if you do 120/80, the pulse pressure would be what? 40, right? The difference between the numbers is what really matters here. So if you have somebody who shoots up to, let's say, 200/160, you're still going to come out with that, like that 40 delta there. That pulse pressure is really what matters, because in an environment where you're running from a bear, or you're not running from a bear, you're just stressed. You've got anxiety at work. You have a deadline coming up, or you have just this genetically higher number when it comes to your blood pressure. Well, your pulse pressure is really what matters more than anything else. And understanding that before you put that cuff on is so important, because once you believe you have high blood pressure, research shows you're more likely to continue with that for the rest of your life. If you believe you have it, or believe you're genetically predisposed to it and there's nothing you can do about it, research shows it's unlikely that you're ever going to actually lower your blood pressure. But we've seen, and you've seen probably, if you've been a patient long enough, that blood pressure does lower with time, if you're intentional about it. Your body is dynamic. You can do things that can heal the artery walls, you can heal the heart, you can watch blood pressure start to go down. It's incredible to watch. You gain, I guess we have front row seats to just the incredible healing capability of the body, because we can see things happening on a day in and day out basis, which really gives us a level of respect for our own bodies, that we don't have to trick the body into health. It's already within us.
And what Dr. Wilson just taught you, very few people are going to tell you he's exactly right what he just told you about that space between those two numbers. And also I want to tell you that in the Midwest, the main reason for blood pressure is because the liver is filling up with fat. And you don't have to have fatty liver disease diagnosed to have your liver full of fat, because there's three things that cause the liver to start to collect fat. It's medication, sugar, and alcohol. Medication, sugar, and alcohol. And even if you're not a drunk, and even if you're not on a lot of medication, most people are on all three of those at some level. And your liver filters 540 gallons of blood every day. And so if you can't get the blood through the liver efficiently, what do you think the blood pressure is going to do? It's going to go this direction. So what do we need to be doing to get blood pressure down if your liver's filling up with fat? We need a real good max living cleanse.
It's true.
And I'm not just trying to sell you. That's the honest to God truth.
That leads me to no. Just kidding. All right, three things that cause that he just said: alcohol, sugar, and what? Medications. Some people think that's just a nice Friday night, huh?
Right? Yeah.
So a couple things that we've already alluded to that can help with blood pressure. Some of the raw materials. Dr. Phil mentioned L-arginine. That's something that we see with metabolic testing. That's a common one that is deficient or depleted. Bonito peptide powder. So this is sourced from dried fish. This has been well studied for decades at this point that lowers blood pressure. It's in one of our supplements called BP Support. I kind of underestimated the power of this, and then I started getting reports from patients who are like, this has gone down 15 markers, and I'm like, is that like a placebo effect? I really did think it was a placebo effect, and then I looked into the research, and going down 15 points like that was actually on average in the research. It was actually on the low end of what the average was in the research. So bonito peptide powder. Grapeseed extract also helps promote nitric oxide production and help lower blood pressure. So it's kind of a 2-in-1 there. So that's what's in a couple of the things that we talk about, like the NOx support. I'm going to keep harping on this thing because, again, you might have heard of super beets. Who's heard of super beets before? All right. Did you know it's not organic? I'm sorry. So anyway, the NOx support, it's a version, it's kind of a version of that, but it's organic. It's all from non-GMO and also no pesticides, no herbicides. That L-arginine support and then that BP support, that's in what we just talked about there. So all the bundles that we talk about tonight, the three separate ones, the cholesterol, the BP support, or the blood pressure support, and then the blood vessel support, which deals with atherosclerosis and also plaque in the arteries. Everything we're talking about is 20% off tonight. We only brought a handful of those over, but you can order them and you still get the 20% off tonight. We hardly ever do 20% off of bundles, but I just feel like that what we're talking about tonight is really important. And honoring commitment, you guys showed up in the rain to a new location with limited parking. So applaud yourself for that, right? So, we talk about moving strategically, and how many of you know 65% of Americans actually didn't move or stopped exercising during COVID? So in 2020, 65% of Americans, partly was because of why? The gym shut down, right? And so one thing that we really needed to do, get out and exercise, we weren't able to do. But that's kind of a myth that we need to be in a gym to exercise. You don't have to be in a gym to move strategically. And I've said this before, is that you can get in the best shape of your life in just 20 minutes a day. And people have challenged me on that. As a fitness specialist, I was a personal trainer for years, and people say, that is not possible to get in the best shape of your life in just 20 minutes a day. There's no chance. My challenge is usually, have you ever done a burpee? You ever done a burpee? Because a lot of times when they think of 20 minutes a day, they're thinking of just kind of like walking on a treadmill or walking outside or something like that. No, if you're intentional, you can get your body in the best shape of your life, and it really does not take hours, and it definitely does not take time on a treadmill, but it is intentional movement. Research has shown for heart health specifically, that a higher level of intensity but a shorter duration of time actually is good for your heart. This flies in the face of what I was taught as a personal trainer, that aerobic was the only thing that was going to be cardiovascularly beneficial. So I was taught that lifting weights, as an example, was not necessarily good for your heart. That's actually completely turned up on its head now. We now know that building lean muscle is so good for your body, but also very good for your heart. Building lean muscle helps you to burn fat. When you burn fat, that takes stress off of the liver, and that's going to take stress off of the heart. Building lean muscle for all of us. And when I say lean muscle, I usually get a different response from men than I do women. Many times women will be like, I don't know about building muscle. I don't want to be bulky, right? I get that sometimes. I don't want to be bulked up. No, you're not at risk for that, just so you're aware. Like, you're usually not at risk for bulking up. We're not talking about going and lifting heavy weights. We're talking about doing movements that's going to challenge your muscles.
Right.
So doing things like push-ups, doing things like lifting small weights but doing a lot of repetitions, and doing that at a high intensity, short duration. How many of you have soup cans at home? Raise your hand if you have soup cans at home. Raise your hand if you're alive tonight. Right? I just want to... All right.
Now that's something a preacher would say.
So you can literally take soup cans. Listen, I'm going to use the supplement bottles. You can take soup cans, and you can stand there, and you can do bicep curls like this with soup cans for 1 minute on, 1 minute off, and then rest. Do it again. 1 minute on, 1 minute off, and rest. Do it again. 5 sets in a row. Guess what you're doing? You're building lean muscle. And guess what? Your arms are going to be sore the next day, even with doing soup cans. Guarantee it. Then you can bend over. If you know, kind of that double wave when you wave at somebody, that little, all right. So if you don't want that, then what you can also do is tricep extensions, and you can go back and forth, and you can do that for a whole minute and then rest for a minute. And then you can take those soup cans and go overhead, boom, 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 and do that for a minute. You're just doing a workout with soup cans, and guess what you're doing? You're building lean muscle and doing high-intensity interval training, and it's short duration. This does not have to be complicated, people, right? No. And then what you can do is then you can do some squats, right? So you can stand there and you can squat for a whole minute and go back and forth, and you can get faster at that. And then if you really want to challenge yourself eventually, you can do some burpees. And I'm not doing one. But it does not have to be complicated. Like Max T3 on the go, we provide so many resources corporately. Like, it's unbelievable how many resources are out there that we have that we just kind of gift to you. One of them is this 30 Days of Motion challenge that you're going to have access to. All you have to do is text into the clinic number. You just text in the keyword challenge, and we'll send you the booklet on this. It's super easy. There's videos of the things that you can do, and it's 30 days of challenge. And really challenge yourself to move every single day, move strategically, do things that are more functional movements, actually turning your body and coming down and squatting and bending over and picking something up and lifting it back. And these functional movements, as you age, are not only going to prevent you and help you from not falling and breaking a hip, but it's also going to strengthen your body. The more that you strengthen, the more stress you'll take off the liver, you'll burn fat, and also you're going to have more energy. Does that sound like a win?
Yes.
Let's win.
That's a
So
win.
keyword challenge into the texting number. If you need the texting number, Talisha can give that to you.
Yep.
But it's just
Yep.
an easy resource for you to just move strategically. So far, so good?
So far, so good. I want to say one more thing, though, about statins. Get the book, The Statin Disaster by Dr. David Brownstein. Get the book, The Statin Disaster by Dr. David Brownstein. He probably has the best information I've ever read on this. He's a medical doctor out of Michigan, and he is telling the truth, and he's on our side, and he has a number of other great books. But you can share this with your friends that are on these, because statins are the most profitable medication in all of history to date. The most profitable medication in all of history to date. And we've talked about the reasons why. I just want to let you know there's a way out. You have been lied to. Please know that. There's a way out.
You know, it's going to be funny if people go home and they do soup can workouts. So I'm really thinking about this. So here's the deal. If you go home and you do a soup can workout, go ahead and have somebody take a picture of that for you, post it on social media, tag us in it, and you're going to be entered in to win something big. To be determined, because I just made it up.
There you go. Yeah, you get
Go
some
ahead.
nitric oxide powder.
Oh, you know what? Would that be a good one?
Yeah.
The office name on what? Social media? Oh, the author.
Dr.
name.
David Brownstein. Dr. David Brownstein.
I
Yeah.
thought you were talking about the soup can challenge. What
Yeah,
the office?
yeah.
Yeah, well, come on, post pictures. That'd be fun for everyone. If you don't have a soup can, that's. Oh well, you know, I don't know. Yeah.
You could use jelly jars, just don't drop them.
Yeah.
You've got jelly jars.
Yeah, maybe you can borrow some. All right, balance the nervous system. So we talk about fear and stress and anxiety and how much of a role this plays on your heart. And you might have heard the term like, "Hey, calm down, man. You're going to give yourself a what? Heart attack, right?" And so this whole idea that your thoughts actually create your reality, and your thoughts actually change your body. It's true. Another book to pick up is Mind Over Medicine. It talks all about this. You're gonna hear all about placebos and why they actually work, and it sometimes outperform the surgery or the drug themselves. It's fascinating, but it also is kind of scary because what goes on up here dictates everything. And so this idea that your nervous system has two components. You have your sympathetic and you have your parasympathetic nervous system. So sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight, bear comes through the doors, we all ramp up, our pulse goes up, our heart rate's through the roof, our blood goes from our organs to our legs so we can get out of here very quickly, because how many of you know we don't need to digest dinner if we're running from a bear? Right?
Yep.
So this whole sympathetic state within the nervous system, it's built into all of us intentionally for stressful situations. Stressful situations. And that's really crisis situations. And yet what happens is that we have that deadline at work or whatever, somebody says something or we see something on social media is more likely, that then causes us this low level of stress chronically. And what we now know about the heart and heart attacks, and this is one of the most important things we're going to talk about tonight, is that most heart attacks don't actually occur because of some thrombosis or some blockage of an artery. Dr. Cohen, who is Vice President of the Physicians Association for Anthropophysical Medicine, and he's got this long bio, down here. Cohen is one of the ones you want to follow. Thomas Cohen, MD. He's a great read. But if you look at what he says, that most heart attacks are likely caused by imbalance in your central nervous system and your autonomic or unconscious nervous system, which controls the function of your internal organs. So most heart attacks actually happen because of the imbalance within the nervous system. We know this innately by how you responded earlier when I said, "Settle down, man, you're going to give yourself a heart attack." We know that what's happening in our mind is actually going to dictate our physiology, and it's only one step away with how we think. But it's not just how we think, it's also about what we do. Because remember that when you're talking about the central nervous system, what is your central nervous system made up of? Brain and what? spinal cord. So everything is processed through brain and spinal cord. So all of the perception that we're having day in and day out is all processed through our central nervous system. And so the central nervous system is the most important system in our entire body, even more important than the heart, because when your heart stops, you can kind of pump it, right? When your heart stops, you can be hooked up to machines for a period of time, but when your brain stops, what happens to you?
Yep.
Yeah, you stop. So your central nervous system is the most important system inside of your body, and that's why it's so well protected. So when you look at this, and I know for many of you, this is you're like, are we talking about the spine? Yes, we are talking about the spine because this is so important, and it's the most often neglected and most forgotten. Because when you talk about what actually protects your central nervous system, it is your spine, and what we do from a day in and day out basis is we put stress on this system, and we forget that what we're doing is causing stress to it. Think about what you're all doing right now that I'm not. Sitting. So sitting is to the spine like sugar is to the teeth. It's going to cause that abnormal stress and pressure to start. Our pelvis tucks in underneath us. It's going to cause stress on the discs. And then what do we have to do when we rock back? We have to do what? We kind of have to lean forward. And so the rest of our body has to adapt. And now you add in technology. What we're doing more so now than ever, especially during COVID world when everything went virtual. How many of your jobs went virtual and you did more like Zoom conferences and Zoom calls? Anyone do more Zoom meetings and more conference work and more computers and just more of that?
Absolutely.
And so what's happening now is that now what are we doing? We're putting kids in front of the screen for hours and hours and hours at a time. Did our children need less or more screen time? What do you think? Yeah, they need less.
Yeah.
And so what's happening is causing tension on the spinal cord itself, and the spinal cord is what's being processed. And so the research is very clear. I did my thesis on tension on the spinal cord itself. It puts the body into that fight or flight response. It also lengthens the spinal cord, strips the fat off of the spinal cord, and this is what leads to things like MS, multiple sclerosis. You strip the fat off of the spinal cord and the brain sends the signals through the fat. No wonder the signal is slowing down from brain to organs when you put that much tension on it. This is why when we look at the spine, we talk about the arc of life or the curve in your neck and how important that curve in the neck is. This is the reason why, is because when you lose that curve in the neck, they call it an arc of life on purpose, because when you lose that, it puts tension and stress in the nervous system, and your nervous system controls everything, and from that point below, everything is going to be then challenged.
Yep.
Because if you've got, let's say the spine shifts like this because of an injury, trauma, a car accident, sports injury, or just abnormal stress and tear from uneven activity over time, you got this much pressure on this nerve goes to the heart. How much curcumin is going to fix that? How much blood pressure support is going to fix that? How much CoQ10 is it going to take to fix that? Do you see the point there? And so if you've got that much pressure building up on that individual nerve right there, what's the actual solution? To get the pressure what? Get that pressure off. That's what a chiropractic adjustment is, to get the pressure off. Now, if you already stretched those ligaments on that side and it's already done that, what's it going to want to go back and do again? It's going to want to go back to this most dominant position. It's what it's known. If you were 50 years old by the time you got your first chiropractic adjustment, your body says, I want to go back real fast, right? And so what do you have to do? Retrain it. And that's why you do exercises to retrain it. That's why you do supporting neck traction. That's why you're doing all the different exercises to not only retrain that, but to make sure that, hey, the spine's most dominant position, it's not going to be that over time. And that's what's brilliant about the body, is that you can literally retrain positions. You literally can retrain how this works, but it's not just to make your x-rays look pretty. Do you know that did you know this, Dr. Phil, that they used to do modeling, and they used to carry their x-rays of their spine, and they used to get judged based off of their x-rays and how straight their spine was.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's new.
And so this is in the old chiropractic textbooks, and I'm thinking, it's not so bad, It wouldn't be so bad if we saw the inside, because I think if we saw the inside of our body and we saw maybe our spine the way we can see our teeth, I think we'd take care of it a little better.
Absolutely.
Right? But we don't. We can't see our spine like we can our teeth. So when we do these things and we feel kind of good, we're like, well, I feel good, so I must be good. Well, only 4% of the nerves actually feel pain. So if you're judging your health, if we are judging our health entirely based off of how we feel, we're missing 96% of function. Do you get that? And you have people go throughout a lifetime without having a central nervous system examination. That's why we do the surface EMG that runs down the spine to see where the imbalances are. But the ultimate test is actually a physical x-ray to see exactly where the bones are positioned, where the nerves are damaged, ultimately where the organs are going to be affected. And that's why every year on the year we get x-rays and look at x-rays, friends, our family, our patients, everything, to see where we are, because it's a good objective litmus test to see where we are and where we need to go. Because how many of you know that we're not always How many of you are always perfect all the time, 100% of the time? Raise your hand. Yeah, thank you. So every year on the year, we look at this and say, well, you've not been good here. Let's move in this direction and make sure that we don't go south too quickly here and correct for these imbalances. And many times that conversation is, hey, doing great here, need to make some edits and tweaks over here, right? And it's just these little tweaks over time to make sure that you're aging gracefully and making sure that our nervous system is functioning at its absolute best, because that's really the goal, is at the heart of everything that not only we believe, but everything we do is optimal functioning, optimal functioning. When your body's functioning at its best, you experience life at its best. And that's really the goal, is to experience life, because when you lose your health, people say you lose your health, you lose everything, but when you gain your health, you gain the world. When you gain your health, you gain the world, because you gain your independence, you gain your functioning, you gain whatever it is that you want to do and what maybe you feel like God has called you to do. Then there's no barrier, so it's really a life without limitations. Do you see that? When you have your health, it's literally a life without limitations. Yep. And so, if you're a guest here tonight, you've not had your nervous system checked, we offer a discount on that at things like this. It's typically $135. We do it for $88. So if you've not had your nervous system checked, or you know someone in your family that has not, get them checked. You can see the team at the front or at the back there. They'll help you with that. Because at the end of the day, the regulation of the nervous system is the most important thing. It's one of the reasons why everyone, are you doing your wobble exercises? How many of you are doing your wobbling exercises? Please raise your hand. Thank you. Okay, so wobbling exercises, it's like nourishment to your spine because it's pumping fluid up and down your spinal cord. It's like vitamins to your spinal cord when you're doing the wobble exercise. It's not just a spinal warm-up before you get adjusted. It's actually hydration and lubrication for your discs and your joints, and you do this on a day in and day out basis. And for how long will you be living, max living, and doing things like this? How long do you plan on doing it?
Forever.
Oh my God, that was music to my ears. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so if you've not been checked, get checked. If you know somebody who's not been checked for the nervous system, we have a Patient Appreciation Day coming up. Talisha, when's our Patient Appreciation Day? Yeah, 17th. So it's Patient Appreciation Days, plural, because we help a lot of people and we can't fit them all into one. So the Patient Appreciation Days, what we're going to be doing is it's going to be a discounted examination, and that all the proceeds that day and those plural days are going to go to Stand for Health Freedom. So anything that people pay for a new patient examination during that time will go to Stand for Health Freedom. How many of you know someone you wish could hear this type of information? You're like, I wish they'd just get checked. I wish they'd get their spinal nervous system evaluated, right? That's the time. Work on them now. Bring them in during that time. That's how, and everything's going to go to Stand for Health Freedom. So that's a great time for that. And then, like I said, all the bundles tonight are 20% off. We do have to say one thing, because it's best not to just throw supplements at things. It's best to test. Listen, if you've already been through testing and you still have some level of you're like, hey, I really think that this would, okay, do it. But if you've not had metabolic testing yet, you've not gone through that process, the reason why we introduced high-level nutrient functional testing into the practice was because we really thought, hey, there's some underlying markers here that we're never going to see unless we do functional testing in. That's when Dr. Phil came on board, and we really started digging in deep, and we worked with our labs to get discounted volume discounting on the labs, because remember, dysfunction leads to disease. Dysfunction leads to disease, and it's best to know instead of just guess. To see is to know, to not see is just to guess. So you don't want to just throw supplements at the wall and see which one sticks, right? That's really not the idea.
That's right.
I want to be very clear on this, but now, what we're doing is with high-level testing, and then you add in the lifestyle risk questionnaire, which is amazing. So on a lifestyle risk questionnaire, it's literally ranking you based off how you fill out the questions, how you're doing in each one of the essentials. So nutrition or mindset or exercise or toxicity or how you're taking care of your spine and nervous system. It's ranking you so that for the very first time we actually have a metric system that we can see, okay, how well are you doing in each one of the essentials, and that should be getting better over time, because when it all is said and done, we're either living max living, we're either living well, we're vulnerable, we're high risk, or we're critical. And you can rank yourself in each individual category based off of how you felt the lifestyle risk questionnaire, and then you combine that with metabolic profile and take a deep dive look into the pathways that create dysfunction or disease, and you've got the perfect system to just see, hey, am I building health or am I building sickness? So if you've not had your metabolic profile, the suggested retail price is $2,003. With volume discounting, we've gotten it down to $750 for our patients. In this event, we're doing it for $650. So anyone in your family who's not been tested, if you've not been tested, make sure you get that, before you just throw a bunch of supplements and spend money on that, make sure you actually get the high-level testing done. And at the end of the day, you're going to have a plan of attack for your health. And I think that's the most important thing, is to have a plan of attack and have a confidence with what's actually happening on the inside, so you know what to do and what not to do and what to stay away from, because there are variable differences within all of us. And so knowing that, can be life-saving. So if you've not gotten that done, make sure you get that done. Our mission is to get this message out to as many people as humanly possible, and realize this: there are people who don't know this information. You leave here tonight, there are people who will challenge you on this. There are people who are going to say, like, hey, I don't know about this, that's kind of not mainstream. Mainstream, I would argue, is not working. The way that we're doing things right now is failing. And to be different in this world is actually a good thing. So as you leave here and you're challenged, just welcome it, because the healthy challenge right now to the current system is what's needed. Thanks, guys.
Let your light shine.